So hello, everyone. This is our final virtual rounds call. This is kind of a little bit different than our typical virtual rounds calls. We kind of sneak this one in here on an extra Thursday evening. It's the 15th of September. Dr. Yusuf J.P. Saleeby is our speaker this evening. And just because we do, I'm going to go ahead and read our mission statement. Our mission is to bring healing to the moms, dads, friends, and loved ones who are facing life-altering side effects from their COVID-19 vaccine. We build bridges between patients and research institutions in order to develop a better understanding of our vaccine complications. React 19 is a science-based nonprofit offering financial, physical, and emotional support for those suffering from long-term COVID-19 vaccine adverse events globally. So we have here again tonight, we have Dr. Saleeby. He has a little bio about him. He's a graduate from the Medical College of Georgia, Augusta, Georgia, and completed postgraduate training at East Carolina University School of Medicine in Greenville, North Carolina. Pursued a career in emergency medicine for almost 2 decades. During his career, he held posts in occupational medicine, DOD, urgent care, and family medicine. Retiring from the emergency department in 2013 after serving as a past medical director for South Carolina Urban Research and Rescue Task Force 1, Dr. Saleeby is now focusing on functional medicine. And he has been working toward a parallel healthcare system for about 2 decades. And in the last 2 years, he's really been ramping things up and smoothing things out. I spoke to Dr. Saleeby as a provider, and I was very impressed with the system that he has in place. And so that's why I thought it was a good idea to have him come on it and talk to us about what he has found absolutely works. It is it is separate from the mainstream medicine that we're all, wound up in. Most providers who I spoke to when I do my vetting calls have all said, that mainstream medicine is just, it's broken. It's got to go. We got to get away from this. We need to split this. We have to do something different. And Dr. Saleeby has found something that works. So without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Dr. Saleeby. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. So I'm just going to screen share, and this is a PDF copy of my slide deck, which is all y'all are welcome to. But let me get this down and start my PowerPoint. So it's just going to be talking about reshaping healthcare. This is something that I've been working on for a number of years pre-pandemic, but the catalyst of the pandemic has made me hunker down and really do things at a quicker pace to try to get this up and running and available. So as we all know, the predominant healthcare system right now is the sick care-based system, and it's a huge biomedical industrial complex. Eisenhower warned us all about the military industrial complex, and I don't know if anyone's ever really warned us in that kind of position in the Oval Office about this biomedical industrial complex. But it's kind of taken over, involves big clinics, hospital systems, big and small pharma, industrial insurance companies, or medical organizations and medical boards, government agencies, and such. They're all involved in this. And it's to keep the sick. We did, when my tenure in the emergency room, I would see, especially the chronically ill. It wasn't the gunshot wounds and lacerations that were quick fixes. It was the people that had CHF and diabetes and hypertension that were constantly coming in this revolving door, this conveyor belt medicine. And it's just, it serves pharma, and it serves big hospital systems that benefit from lab testing and diagnostics and procedures. It's extremely costly, and it's not sustainable. And if anything, this pandemic has shown us that hospital systems can't function very well. And if you look at some of the small community hospitals, which has been most of my experience working in the ER, it's usually a single provider, emergency department with 5 to 12 rooms. Not many of them are standing. Matter of fact, the last one I directed, in the middle of South Carolina has, 2 years after I left, had to close down. It was not sustainable, that model. And as this monster kind of grows, it's going to be too big to fail. And at that point, the taxpayer is going to have to bail it out, kind of like they did with the auto industry and stuff. And another part of the problem is that it seems of late everything is profit focused. Good doctors are forced to comply with the current dollar-driven paradigm, and it's difficult to escape. When a clinician has, a potential large student loans to pay back, has a house, a family, kids in college, they seem kind of trapped in the financial system, and they can't break away to go do what they really want to do and practice how they really want to practice. And there's a lack of patient advocacy. The idealistic practitioner always puts their patients number one. However, the system we're locked into currently is very corrupt, and it corrupts good doctors. And many fall in line with the status quo because they have to, not because they really want to. And I think that the current system is at the precipice of implosion. I cannot see how it can last for very much longer. I mean, we saw some things happen during the height of the pandemic with the large numbers of people filling up the ICUs and whatnot. And I think if nothing else, this pandemic has certainly been a catalyst for the destruction of our current system. So, there'll be some slides here with some information and maybe a book to read that talks about micro offices, keeping the overhead low. You want to, conserve your funds so that you can pass on those savings to the patients, because what I'm trying to do is avoid being that quote unquote concierge doctor or VIP doc, because they're just contributing to the problem of unaffordable healthcare. So you got to keep your overhead down to keep prices reasonable, make a profit. Every physician should be profitable and make a decent living. You're not going to get uber wealthy and become a multimillionaire doing what I do, but you'll live comfortably as I do, and without debt. We have to return to a patient first paradigm. We've got to make sure that we practice as patient advocates. And that is what's going to regain the faith that has been lost in the recent years by our patients. I can't tell you how many are so disgruntled with the system, feel disenfranchised, and would never want to go back to their regular primary care doctors for those reasons. Cost containment, a reduction in cost will make the new system sustainable. We have to cut out the fat. We have to get back to the basic tenets of practicing medicine, which is God gave us 2 ears and a brain, that white and gray matter between those ears, to figure things out. And we have to go back to the basics of using our minds and making diagnoses clinically without using or relying too heavily on testing and diagnostics. And then it's always been a point of mine to keep things simple. I like things simple and inexpensive and clear cut. And that's one way we can change the system. But it'll probably take 1 or 2 generations, because if people are burdened with a lot of chronic illness, it may take another generation of patients before we can see them free and clear of that. So, they may still be a burden on the system in our hospitals and clinics, Alzheimer's wards and things like that before we get on top of it. So the fix in an overview, we have to convince even a minority of clinicians out there to convert to the new paradigm. And once that ball is rolling, I think it's going to build up momentum, just like a snowball, and get bigger and bigger. So you go from small to bigger, and I don't say big because I'm scared of big. So you want to start out even with at-home office, doing telemeds initially, and then once you scale up, you can go to a micro office, and then if need be, a regular brick and mortar office. But you want to focus on having a center for excellence. And I think to win this war, and we are at war with this horrible system, we must be in good collaboration with others, other clinicians, other groups, and network. And that's been a big push of mine, is to start networking. I've been, reached out to Angel with her organization and a few others, trying to get folks to recognize each other and collaborate, put differences aside and work together as one big group, because that's the only way we're going to muster enough of a force to combat and win this war. So, once we move from small clinics to larger clinics, to maybe establishing our own hospitals of wellness, not of sickness, and we can start an educational revamping. I started this already 5 years ago with Priority Health Academy, offering symposiums. We offer sub-internships, shadowing days, and one-on-one instructions and master classes for folks interested in our model of what we call reformed functional medicine. So it's a way to spread the word and educate people rapidly. There are other organizations like IFM or A4M, AARM that offer instruction, but it's laborious and expensive, and it drags out for years. I didn't get where I am now, going to 3 weekend seminars. It's been 20 years in the making. And I've been able to compress this into a deep immersion with me and my academy and our preceptorships to educate people up so they're up and running fairly quickly. Then we have to look at insurance. The current insurance system is a mess, and there are some shared plans out there that are very helpful for our patients. My wife and I just actually switched over recently to one of those. And then eventually that will swing into med mal insurance and legal reforms, so that we are not burdened by medical malpractice suits and the fear of those. And then at that point, when we're big enough, we can leverage ourselves with pharma and get pharma to bend or take a knee, if you will. The benefits, we have to look at a new licensing structure. I would like to see something on a federal level versus the different states, and or state licensure where you pay a nominal minimal fee to cross borders and then practice in all 50 without being cumbersome. New educational structures. I think medical schools are horrible. I never liked my medical school training. I thought it was deplorable. And 1 hour of nutritional instruction in all 4 years and none in my residency is deplorable, at least from my perspective as a functional medicine doc. And so we also need to develop new medical organizations and provider and patient advocacy. So I'm going to give a little bit of an overview of what we've established in our business model. Again, it was spawned in 1998. I was already several years into working as an ER doc, and I overlapped that with a private solo practice in Savannah, Georgia, which was cash only, and it was more anti-aging. I didn't call myself a functional medicine doctor at that time, but I was building up to that. And then, of course, I suffered a lot of bumps and bruises along that 20-year journey. And I would hate for anyone else to go through that because it's quite painful and expensive. And there was no playbook at that time or no blueprint to follow. So I was creating it as I was going. And it basically landed into what I call reformed functional medicine. It's now kind of mature and it's sort of emerged like a phoenix from what was in the past. And it is profitable, sustainable, and we are debt-free. Let's go to the next. So some of the biggest hurdles I will tell you is marketing. It's always been an enigma for me. I have gone through at least 6, if not 7 marketing companies. Most of them are inept. The last one was unethical. It's 7 figures docs. I'll mention them because they're horrible. They lie to you. They don't fulfill their promises, and they will charge your credit cards without authorization. Those guys were scoundrels, and they've been reported for unethical behavior. But it's always been that way. One marketing company almost put me out of business. So you have to be super careful with what they promise, because most of the time they're not telling you the truth, or they have these fancy testimonials that make you think they're great when they're not. A website and SEO, search engine optimization, is key, and that's what we focus most of 100% of our allotment, our budget to marketing is with SEO. And then after about 5 or 6 years and you've built up a patient base, it'll move towards word of mouth. And word of mouth will trump any type of SEO for organic search engine optimization and organic searches that bring in new patients. And that's just how it is now. We're at that 50% point. And on our last staff meeting, I have monthly staff meetings where we are very transparent with our numbers, and we had about a 62% conversion rate. I think it was like 61.5% conversion rate. That's inquiries to active patients, which is unheard of. Most practices are at or less than 20% conversions. So we're laser focused in our funnel, and our SEO guy brings in tremendous results. I think you should practice where you live. If you're not in a great demographic area and you have to travel 20-30 minutes to an area to set up a practice, you can do that, but most of the time you can do it in your own hometown, your own community. And if you're doing telemedicine, you can cover the entire state or whatever state you're licensed in. So I'm licensed in a couple of states. I do have a nurse practitioner who covers six Midwestern states for us, because those states don't require a collaborating doc, so she operates independently. And I have a couple other remote providers. I have 6 nurse practitioners and PAs that work with me in our office, and they're doing most of the heavy lifting. I bootstrapped it. I didn't go to the bank for a big loan. I kept it simple and started with my wife as my only other employee. And I started doing some house calls and a lot of telemed. I was doing telemedicine 15 years ago. And so all my platforms were actually in place when the lockdown happened, and our numbers went up, not down, as was seen in some other practices. The other thing is you can try to find persons or organizations that are willing to sponsor you to help you start a practice. There may be folks in your community that are willing to do that. But it's important to remain as debt-free as possible to keep it sustainable. And you want to hunt for young, energetic, hungry, intelligent, enterprising, and entrepreneurial providers. Once you've established yourself as the owner operator of the business, you want to then, once the numbers dictate, bring on others. Maybe I did this sooner than I should have, probably, because I knew it would take a while to train. You can't bring in a locum tenens nurse practitioner to cover you while you're on vacation. You have to have them on board long enough to train them. So, our competition is the sick care system. And given that and what we know about it, you should succeed if you open up your own. Okay. So like they say in that movie, where, build it and they will come. And you have to keep your idealism. You want to, even though it sounds counterintuitive, you've got to put the money and making money thing as a secondary, intention, and keep it patient focused so we can win back our patients who are disillusioned with us. Again, if you want to compare some of the things like VIP or concierge medicine, it's very expensive and exclusive. You're excluding a lot of people. A lot of docs that switch over from a insurance-based to a hybrid or VIP-based model will lose the vast majority of their patients who have to go seek care elsewhere, which isn't fair for them. I don't like exclusivity. I think exclusion is a dirty word. There are some philosophers that say that's one of the ugliest words in the American language. So I don't like it. So you'll not see the word concierge on any of my websites or my contracts for membership. And then you have big hospital systems that are expensive and not that efficient or convenient. And then you have free clinics that are affordable, but they're not so convenient. Maybe they're not that efficient. And a good example is the VA system. So today we want to establish like-minded groups to meet on a regular basis and form an alliance like the AFLDS, FLCCC, Concerned Doctors, React 19, and many others, AAPS. And there are many, many more little pockets out there. We've got to come together to collaborate, because as Ben Franklin showed us in his little flag or his little drawing, a divided snake cannot die. You have to be united. We have to form a coalition of like-minded organizations to put up a good fight and win this battle. And once we develop a parallel healthcare system, and I'm talking replete with centers of excellence, hospitals, wellness centers, educational systems, we can dominate. How to get started? You have to start out small, and you can grow rapidly. You prove yourself as giving exemplary care, and you will grow rapidly. Word just gets around, and we're at that stage now. 8 years into this, we have more new patients than we can actually handle. So we're very much relying on the word of mouth, not so much on search engine new patients coming in that way. And but watch out for big. I don't like big. It scares me. Big is like big organizations, hospital systems, government people, big tech, big pharma. Don't like it. I like things small and simple. And so how to get started? Well, the Priority Health Academy is the educational arm of my business. I have a clinic called the Carolina Holistic Medicine Centers. I have 2 locations, one near Myrtle Beach and the other near Charleston, or in Charleston, South Carolina. We have a virtual presence in North Carolina. And again, we have a virtual presence in 6 Midwestern states like Colorado, Montana, Idaho, Wyoming. We have a licensing agreement that we're working, and I'm working actually with Angel on morphing this a little bit so that it's more attractive to folks to get started. The object is not for us to make money, but is really for us to start similar practices throughout the country that are sustainable and not going to be a burden financially on the providers. We'll give educational support, master classes, clinical support with sub-internship or internships or shadow days. And basically, once the provider gets solid in the delivery of this type of paradigm of healthcare, the student will then become the teacher for that next generation. So while I was a student for a while of this integrative approach, I am now the teacher of my nurse practitioners and PAs, and I expect them in turn to become teachers for their next generation. And as a matter of fact, I insist that my nurse practitioners and PAs develop lectures and PowerPoint presentations. One is doing one on methylene blue and its use for HIV, COVID, and Lyme patients. And I have another one that's going to be talking about type 2 and type 3 diabetes, and both integrative and traditional ways to handle those. We also provide the front and back end of the business support for the new clinics. We're showing them what platforms to use and how they can build and support themselves. And we have the option of a call center. We have an 800 number where the new office that springs up can point their phone number to our call center until that time that they're ready to take that task on themselves by hiring receptionists and nurses and things like that to help out. How do you fund this? You can do what I did. I put enough savings away in my ER career that I bootstrapped it, and I lived off of some of those savings for the first year and a half. You can go get a business loan. You can find a sponsor. You can establish a nonprofit and seek donations to do this. There's a group I'm working with out in Portland and the West Coast, and they're actually more along the lines of naturopathic doctors, NDs, and also licensed acupuncturists. I'm the only MD that's in association with them, and we're looking at joining forces for their educational arm. They have the lofty goal of eventually opening up a school of naturopathic medicine to rival the ones that are out there now. And I think we have to throw those designations out: ND, DA, DO, doctors of Oriental medicine. We got to throw that out. We're one big team. We have to kind of stop the silliness of looking down our noses at advanced providers. I don't like the term mid-level. I think that's degrading. And I call my PAs physician associates, and my nurse practitioners, I respect them. I have had some, mine are greatly trained, and they will rival some doctors out there. And I'm not embarrassed to say that. I would have them they take care of me. So there's also angel investors and corporate sponsors, but you got to be careful. You don't want them taking over and demanding that you do things their way. You want to always be in the driver's seat. This is your freebie. This is a book. So James Maskell is an economist from Great Britain. He's an English fellow, and he pronounces it the evolution of medicine. But you can see there's one fish swimming against the tide. This book came out in 2016. I've met James at some conferences, and he has a good online podcast presence. He's an affiliate of the Institute for Functional Medicine, and his book is sort of, I was reading it, and I'm like, oh my God, I read it the day it came out, essentially, and I'm like, oh my God, I could have written this book. Almost every platform he mentions in there, I had much experience with. So you need to eventually build a library, and we can help you show you what books to build your library with, or what resources you should have, what organizations you should join. Some are good, some aren't. And we can tweeze that out for you depending on what you want to focus your medical practice in, general medicine, or if you want to focus it on Lyme or chronic illness, or it's going to be a big large number of people coming in with vaccine injury and long haulers and post-COVID syndromes. That will keep us very busy for years to come. And so I encourage you to grab a copy of this book and read it, and it'll help you understand the micro office model and how that can work, and how functional medicine can work in there as well. Also, first thing you want to do is establish core values. I had a business advisory group called Vistage. It was a membership group of a bunch of CEOs from different types of companies, non-competing companies that would meet once a month. I transitioned from Vistage, which was really big and took a lot of time every month, to a smaller TAB, TAB, the advisory, the alternate advisory board. And I have a business advisor I still meet with on a every other month basis that helps me through. And one of the first things we established in Vistage were core values for our companies. So I picked 3: respect, integrity, and dependability. And then I went back to my office and I got my staff to vote on adding 2 more. So we took a silent secret ballot and we added compassion and honesty to that. So those are our core values, but you could add things like advocacy, ethics, transparency. I think it's important to pick your core values carefully and advertise them. It's on the signature of my emails going out. It's all plastered all over our offices, and so that everyone can see. And things like integrity and respect, not only amongst our staff, but also our patients. So if we have a disrespectful patient who's causing problems, then they're at risk for termination. So, you have to abide by your own core values. On this slide is just a little bit of an algorithm of how we do things with small group educational events that are happening, annually right now, but we're thinking of biannually or even quarterly. And they're usually 5-day live events or virtual. We had to go virtual during the lockdown, but this will be a minimum of so many folks, and then we'll meet mostly in Charleston. There's self-study programs. We have a huge library of PowerPoints and articles to read to get you up to speed on our form of healthcare delivery. And then we offer preceptorships, 1 week, 2 weeks, depends. It's very modifiable and adaptable for folks. And then we have ongoing master classes, which is like a once-a-month lecture that you'll have access to. The other thing I want to talk about briefly is shared medical insurance. So HSA4America.com is one organization that's a broker, and my wife and I actually have an MPB account, and there's others out there like MediShare. Some of them are faith-based and some of them are loosely that's we're paying a third less in premiums and getting way more out of it in services. Eventually, though, we'll want to build a legal system, a legal network of attorneys that support our efforts and reform our medical legal system. These are lofty goals, but they're out there. There's second tier things to do. establish higher levels of academic centers or medical schools, if you will, and try to unify the MD, doctors of Oriental medicine, even chiropractic. And one thing about chiropractic is they teach business classes in their curriculum, where in medical school they don't. And so unless you have an MBA, you're going to struggle. And then there are things out there called private membership associations or private health associations. Those are things to be explored as well, as something to build your practice around. We already talked about shared health insurance. And then, we want to, as I have, construct a system of apprenticeship and internships to help promote learning, so that folks coming in that are green will learn the ropes. And if they come in somewhat green, you don't have to unteach them bad habits, and at some point we'll develop large in-person or virtual conferences, and eventually medical organizations and boards that are friendly to us. And then we could lobby local and central government to legislate changes that are friendly to our model. You're not going to find answers with big tech. So, you can read about what Amazon and what Apple are doing, and that's not going to fix our healthcare system. If anything, it might hurt it further. Tech can be kind of nifty and cool. You can read about it in journals and on TV, and it sounds wow, but in actuality, what's going to save medicine is the human touch, and not too many tests and procedures, and no phone apps are going to save medicine. I think it's beyond repair. Artificial intelligence, automation, wearable devices, and transhumanism are not really the answers. So I'm a little bit wary of those. And I think now is the time for a healthcare reset or restructuring. I think the pandemic has really catalyzed this to force us to put our heads down on the rails and listen and put our noses to the grindstone. We can collaborate on a parallel healthcare system to rival the one that we're stuck in right now. And it's going to benefit providers. It's going to lower burnout and stress, make it profitable. We'll have happy providers. And of course, the patients will also benefit. So the big take home from this really is we need to unite and collaborate to make this work. And I just want to thank you.
Absolutely. So that's it. We have to get together and make this work. Like I said, the providers who I've spoken to, and the ones who will watch this later, and the ones who are on this call, we know that what happened in the beginning of the pandemic with the NIH, the FDA, CDC, et cetera, were saying, tell everybody to stay home. There's no treatment for this. Everybody stay home. Don't talk to each other. You can't, people can't talk. People can't think for themselves, essentially, and listen to what we say and do what we tell you to do. So now that's why I wanted to have the virtual rounds call, so that people can meet each other and talk to each other. And that's why I was very impressed with your program, because it's what this country needs. We have to move away from what is going on right now in order to change things, and it's scary.
And Angel, I know I'm kind of sort of preaching to the choir here, because I know most people who are probably in this organization are like-minded and maybe have this as a mindset or as their worldview. I think, collaborating, putting differences aside, unlike what's happened during the pandemic, if you have a varying opinion, you are deplatformed and censored. And we can't allow that to happen in a new system. So there's going to be a lot of shifts in the paradigm. We eventually have to create our own journals. And I know there's some journals popping up that are well balanced and show two sides of a story or an argument or a controversy. They're bound to happen, but there's no place in anything, whether it's medicine or politics, for censorship at all. So that's got to go.
Agree 100%. And just like I think more and more people are turning to alternative news sources, alternative media, and not just focusing on the mainstream media, because they know that it's not exactly what's accurate. And you made a great point, and something that patients have been saying to, I was an ICU nurse before I became a nurse practitioner, and, people talk to nurses just like your nurse practitioners. They talk to nurses a little bit differently than they might talk to their doctors. And by and large, patients are really sick of healthcare system that right now. They don't trust it. They don't trust their doctor. They don't trust the hospital. They just do not trust it. So, which, like you said, if you build it, they will come. And I really believe that. So
it's very unfortunate, but in a way we're a little bit responsible for this because we let the control go away from those that are the clinicians. I mean, years ago, you have to be an MD to be the CEO of a hospital. And now it's some guy with an MBA from Harvard, and he doesn't know jack about patient care, nor does he care.
Right.
And he'll cut in front of you in line to get food at the hospital cafeteria and kind of diss you, and you're there seeing patients and you have only 3 minutes to grab lunch, and I don't know if you all know Dr. Robert Pearl, but he's written a few books on healthcare. He was a former CEO for, I think, almost 10 or 20 years of Kaiser Permanente Group. So he wrote a couple books called well, he's written a couple of books that are worth reading. Now, I don't necessarily agree with all his fixes because he comes from a big hospital system, but he does point out some deficiencies. He watched his father, who was a dentist, succumb to the system. And I had the opportunity to interview him 2 years ago for our symposium, our annual symposium. So he has some great ideas, but again, not all of them I agree with, because he's trying to salvage the existing paradigm and system, whereas I want to change it completely. It's due for an overhaul.
It totally is. And, not to be a conspiracy theorist, and, React 19 is completely apolitical, non-political. Just as an aside note, my significant other shared with me today, there was a YouTube video that's out and about there that a very big wig in our big corporate hospital system here, Hackensack Meridian, he was at the Davos conference. So that makes sense. And then I thought, you know what? I wonder how many of the big mucky mucks across the country that are in charge of their hospital corporations are in the pocket of the World Economic Forum at all.
Right. It looks like Kimberly she has her hand up, so I don't know if she has a question.
Go ahead, Kimberly. You're muted. I don't know if you're speaking because your camera's not on.
So we're like the two-headed monster. So beginning, it wasn't this fall, it was a year ago. We were invited. I know JP's on the same email chain, but there's an invitation to go to Washington and meet with the Doctors Caucus, and actually got to meet with Senator Ron Johnson. Real fireball. I pray to goodness he gets back in. Well, out of that, and it was very, very fascinating. So we learned quite a bit about the influence of big pharma. I mean, they just pour so much money. Obviously we know that, and they control the doctors, they control the protocols. There's so much control. So we got to hear about that. We got to speak to, the different congressmen. Well, be careful what you wish for. Well, I got appointed to a committee. It's called the President's Council, and it's basically a group of doctors across the country. And we meet with Congressman Burgess, who is like one of the chairs of the Doctors Caucus. And he's out of Texas, but he chairs this committee, and we meet quarterly by Zoom. And we discuss some of the policies that he's working on in Washington. And this is kind of dovetailing into what you're talking about tonight. So one of the things, and they keep focusing on, it's not, some of it's like, physicians and suicide rate, but one of the things they keep focusing on is Medicare reimbursement. So anybody that's in this system, the SIC system, they know basically that Medicare kind of sets the pace for everything else. Third-party payers, eventually Medicaid, state level. So we know that Medicare segment. in this new Inflation Reduction Act, or whatever they want to call it, but people don't realize the incredible Medicare cuts. So what's going to happen is they keep putting the squeeze on physicians with reimbursement. Like you said, they come out with huge student loans. You know, they've got the obligation of that and trying to support a family, you know, trying to buy all the obligations of adulting along with paying back student loans. And now they keep cutting the reimbursement back more and more for physicians on that side, to where it's eventually going to implode, and doctors are going to be looking more and more for that alternative. So the key is we have to, you know, the doctors that are kind of out in practice now, yes, they're going to look at a good option. They're just going to throw their hands up, but you really have to reach the ones coming out. So I taught at a DO medical school. I'm an MD, but you know, the only thing I couldn't teach was their manipulation, osteopathic manipulation course. But one thing that I noticed about the osteopaths is they're more holistic and they're more open-minded. Like one of their graduates went on and got functional medicine training. He's teaching at that school. So they're a little more open-minded toward this kind of approach, and would probably even maybe entertain having a speaker come to the school. I taught at Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia, but they would be more open, and it's reaching these younger folks and putting the idea in their head. The other thing, I don't know, JP would be set up to do it. I would not. I had a medical student that needed one more rotation. She's begging me, and we didn't have a brick and mortar office set up at that time. And I should have thought about referring her over to you. She needed, you know, family medicine or peds or something. That'd
Right.
be ideal to be able to take, and sometimes they'll pay you to have a medical student come hang out with you.
Yeah,
And
Kimberly, we offer sub-internships and clinical rotations. I actually have a student now from MUSC. She's a doctorate nurse practitioner student. We just had one that spent several weeks with us last month and the month before. So we do open up our doors to medical students at MUSC, or we've had them from Clemson, nurse practitioners. And actually, I hired two folks that rotated through. Peter Rambo is an excellent adult geriatric nurse practitioner who did his clinicals with me from his last year at Clemson, and I hired him on the spot. He was really sharp, and it was a no-brainer. So it gives me the opportunity to see folks out in clinical practice, observing them and knowing who I want to hire and who I don't. So there was a question I want to answer. So somebody has asked to review general fees. I'd like to do that on an individual basis, so we can do that over a phone or a Zoom call. So, and I'm working with Angel actually to help make it even more attractive to folks. So it's a very individualized. The process will be to see what is affordable and how we can make it work so everyone's happy. So there is an onboarding fee, of course, and then it will depend on what sort of services you want. Do you want the sub-internship? Do you want master classes? So it's going to depend. And I can go over those in private with folks.
I can email introduce you guys, or Stan, if you want to just direct message JP on this Zoom chat, you know, however,
I think my contact information is at the bottom of the last slide. I think has my phone number and email address. So feel free to email me.
Okay, so I'll get those slides out to everyone once you give me the revised deck, and then this will be posted also. So he's easy to find. You can just search him.
Yeah, Yusuf Saleeby is not a very common
name,
so you do that.
You're the only one that pops up, really.
Probably right. So yeah, but Angel, thank you so much for having me and on your meeting. And
Stan said I meant what he charges patients.
Okay, so I have a fee structure that you know, for me, if the folks want to see me, there's a fee for that, and then it's $100 less if they see my nurse practitioners or PAs. But in our demographic, what made sense, and I'm probably undercharging for my satellite office in Mount Pleasant, than I was for the Myrtle Beach office. But currently, and we've seen incremental rises in the fees and the membership, but essentially I charge for the onboarding and then the follow-up visits different. For complex patients that may require 1.5 hours of a visit, there are separate fees, but essentially it's somewhere between $400 and $500 for follow-up visits. It is anywhere from $450 to $950 for super complex visits onboarding with me. Now, like I said, it's about $100 less for the APPs. And those visits are at least an hour. We don't do 15-minute visits. You can't get to know your patients unless you do an hour plus. And then we have a membership structure. We call them care plans. We have one that's a maintenance care plan, which is more affordable, and that's about $150 a month. No upfront retainer, just $150 a month. Payable in full, they get a discount. And then if it's month to month, and then we offer family. If there's another family member, there's a 10% discount on that. And then we have the restorative plan, which is a little bit more expensive. It's near $200 a month, and that supplies them with 6 visits a year and a higher level to conquer things like some of the chronic Lyme disease patients, people with mold and mycotoxin illness and things like that, a lot of autoimmune. So hopefully that gives you an idea. But every demographic, we don't dictate the fees. That's something you have to come up with that's comfortable for you, for your level of income, and also comfortable for the demographic you're serving.
Okay. So thank you again, Dr. Saleeby. I really appreciate your time and your wisdom and sharing your ideas. And I mean, I think we probably on this call, at least, and those who are going to watch this will agree that this has to happen in our country in some shape or form. We have to get away from what medicine is right now, because it's no good for patients, and it's no good for the country.
Right.
So just real quick, next week, we're going to start our Tuesday meetings. So every other Tuesday beginning next week. So Tuesday, 9/20 at 7 p.m. is going to be Attorney Tom Renz, as well as former Assistant Attorney General of Colorado, Maureen West. So if you have legal questions, please come and bring them with you to that call. And then on 10/4 is going to be Joel and Sean from React 19, and they're going to be presenting the patient survey that we have, the 3rd patient survey that React did. It's very interesting. And then moving into October and forward, I've got stuff brewing. I just need to solidify some things before I put it out there. And also remember, the FLCCC conference, if you're able to go, is in Orlando from on October 14th through the 16th, and Dr. Saleeby will be speaking there as well. Activation, reactivation due to COVID-19 and vaccine injury. And I believe that's going to call us a night. I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you. God bless.
Bye-bye.